right, we're getting right into it because things are working. Praise God. Moving right along here. Welcome to Scout Team Sports. I am your host, DeValian, and make sure the lighting is good there. Sure the lighting. A little bit of struggle streaming, just a little bit. This is max brightness. All right, but we are moving right along here with this edition of Scout Team Sports. Again, I am your host, DeValian. I appreciate all of my subscribers. If you are not subscribed, please consider subscribing as this young and up and coming channel continues to grow. I was on Anchor for 3 years, started in May of 2020 during the pandemic, and transitioned to YouTube at the start of this football season after relocation. So, yeah, that's what we're doing now. We're transitioning to YouTube. We're going to be on YouTube to grow this channel even more. And again, I appreciate all of my subscribers. And even if you're not subscribed and just watching and you just want to listen and watch for sports knowledge and sports content that we talk about here, I'm going to be getting more into the NBA as time goes on. But for right now, still hats off to the Lakers for winning the in-season tournament a little while back. And then other than that, we'll pretty much get more into it once football season is over. But for right now, it's the start of the college bowls. So for college bowls, we'll go over those real quick, just the ones for today. Not too much to go over here other than the UCLA and Boise State game in the LA Bowl in particular, because I wanted to mention what's going on there. But you have the Myrtle Beach Bowl in Conway, South Carolina. That's Georgia Southern versus Ohio. R+L Carriers New Orleans Bowl, Jacksonville State against Louisiana. Louisiana always goes to their own bowl in New Orleans. Avocados from Mexico, Cure Bowl, Miami of Ohio versus Appalachian State. Then you've got the New Mexico Bowl, New Mexico State versus Fresno State. And then here is the LA Bowl, the Independence Bowl, first of all, Cal versus Texas Tech. And then the LA Bowl hosted by Gronk, UCLA versus Boise State. The top heads are predicting Boise State because even though they have an interim staff, they've been together longer. They're just coming off of winning the Mountain West Conference Championship. That is Boise State. And UCLA has so many key players and coaches that are not going to be there, primarily because of the transfer portal and hirings and firings and just quitting jobs and moving on. In particular, UCLA's quarterback, who wants to go back, he was entered the transfer portal, wants to go back to the East Coast, reportedly to be closer to where he is from. So I think it dampers things because, then the bowl game won't be as good because everybody who could be a deciding factor, key playmakers are not going to be there. So it kind of taints the game. And then on top of that, this particular bowl has a championship belt as its trophy, like I stated before. And, it's nice, it's funny, coming from, taking something from wrestling, but sometimes you can overdo it. I like bowl trophies in college football. They, to me, are an epitome of making college football special. And you got all these different types, different designs for bowl trophies that's really unique to the sport. No other sport does it. College basketball, every single one of them has like a conference championship, but it's pretty much the same, style of trophy. And then, your NCAA championship. But in college football and these bowl games, these bowl trophies are unique in the bowl, representing the bowl, representing who's sponsoring them. So I think that you should keep with that tradition. You got to have something that stays the same, especially if it's something unique. But like I said, switching it to a championship belt, I don't think is necessarily, does that represent LA? I don't know. Okay, but all right, it represents Los Angeles, I guess. I can't tell you. But anyway, those are the ones for that. And then, we'll get, as we get closer to New Year's and the more important bowl games. I'm curious to see how Florida State's going to react in their bowl game since they're not in the college football playoff. Are they just going to lay down to show, the bowl committee that they don't care? Even though, yes, the playoff is expanding next year, are they going to lay down, or are they going to stop a mud hole in Louisville to make a statement as to why they shouldn't have been excluded, and they shouldn't have been leapfrogged over by two teams, not one but two. I say they do that. I say they embarrass the crap out of their opponents and beat them like 75-0 if they can, or score 100 points, and show that you can't just disrespect them like that. It's full blatant disrespect. But yeah. Anyway, we're moving on to the NFL because there's not much to talk about since college football is winding down. And we have to recap. I did say in the midweek scramble, just because there were two backup quarterbacks, I didn't know what was going to happen. The Raiders didn't look that good offensively against the Vikings, although be it a tougher defense that they face other than, as opposed to this past Thursday. But my goodness, I didn't know it was going to be like that. Aiden O'Connell, 4 first half touchdown passes without Josh Jacobs. And Zamir White filled in, did just fine. The offensive line actually played decent, and that's without two of their starters in particular, who was always touted as like their best offensive lineman, which I don't believe so. But Colton Miller was not there. And they 63-21. I mean, and literally like the Chargers last two touchdowns were very late in the game. So for the most part, it was 7 points for the Chargers most of the game, and then the Raiders were just continuing to score. The last two touchdowns, they actually dialed it back in the fourth quarter. The last two touchdowns were defensive touchdowns for the Raiders. A fumble recovery returned by a defensive lineman, which was so fun to see because that's my thing. And then a pick six from Jack Jones, who was coached by Antonio Pierce when he was much, much younger and in his college years, high school years, high school and early college years at Cal Beach Poly. And then he gets him from the Patriots, who, it didn't work out with Belichick and whatnot, even though that's a defensive prowess in the NFL. But, I mean, he wanted him because he knew how good of a player he was. And my goodness, that pick six at the end of the game was probably off a screenplay that he read beautifully and almost overleaped it when he leaped through to try to make the pick, caught it behind his back, meaning he's leaping forward and he catches it behind himself one-handed. Like, that has to be the defensive play of the year. Not just a defensive highlight, the defensive play of the year. He single-handedly shut that screen down by recognizing it early, and then he leaps and goes in the middle of it. Go watch the replay of that. Even if you're not a Raider fan, go watch that replay. That is the most, like, single-handedly taking a play over, and the way he leaped through the screen pass and made that interception and walked into the end zone, that was amazing. Even they showed a clip of Mark Davis, that was too fast for his eyes, I know. He was like, what? What was that? That's the guy that your interim head coach said he wanted because he coached him beforehand, and it was a great pickup. And I'm pretty sure even Keyshawn Johnson has said that he can become one of the best corners in the league. And it's about doggone time, especially that happened for the Raiders, especially with the Raiders' track record of not getting good defensive backs, especially when they draft defensive backs in the first round of the draft. They just seem to not be able to have good luck getting first round draft picks other than Charles Woodson. But they've had so many since Charles Woodson that they've drafted in the first round that didn't work out, either got injured, they went to a different team and maybe did a little better. Not much going on. But drafted in the first round, I mean, this has been a long time coming for us to have a possible shutdown corner. A long time coming. And at the right time, especially when the defense is improving, defensive line, linebackers, and now you just need that secondary to be solidified. It's great timing. And Antonio Pierce made that call to say, I want this guy. and Mark Davis allowing him to do so. As an interim coach, you have to make him the permanent coach. You have to make him a permanent head coach. So I expect it regardless if they make the playoffs or not, because their playoff hopes are still alive after blowing out the Chargers. Their playoff hopes are still alive, but the main thing is, regardless of how this rest of the season turns out, he's a Raider through and through. From LA, grew up a Raider fan. He loves the team. He's got Super Bowl championship experience by being the only team in the Giants to beat an undefeated team in the Patriots in that Super Bowl. There's nothing else. There's nothing else that needs to be. I don't care. Even though I like Eric Bieniemy, and I'm just hoping that Eric Bieniemy, now that the Chargers have fired Staley, I'm hoping the Chargers don't pick up Bieniemy, because that'll be a problem. But as long as Bieniemy doesn't go to the Chargers, to the Broncos, which he shouldn't, to the Chiefs, which he probably won't because Andy Reid's still there, or to the Patriots, as long as Eric Bieniemy doesn't go to one of those two teams and he eventually becomes a head coach in some other team, I'm good with that. I want Antonio Pierce as the number one pick as our head coach moving forward. Sign him for a long-term deal. Let's get it going. You gave Gruden 10 years. I don't expect you to get it to Antonio Pierce, but you better give him at least half. At least 5 years to start. So, hats off to the Raiders for, after a 3-0 shutout, to come back the very next week, or less than a week, on Thursday Night Football and blow out the Chargers 63-21. My goodness. Without Josh Jacobs, Aiden O'Connell looked good. Even if you could say, oh, the Chargers aren't that good of a team, that is true. But the fact that the rookie was able to do that, and the team sets a franchise record for most points scored ever, hats off to him. I'm very proud of my team. Now we're moving on. Saturday games lining up right now. And actually one is starting right now, I meant to say. And then the Vikings and Bengals here. Vikings at Bengals. That's starting right now. For this one, you've got Jake Browning going up against the guy who came in, Nick Mullins, in the fourth quarter and led a field goal drive to beat the Raiders with the Vikings. So it's Nick Mullins getting the start over Josh Dobbs and going up against Jake Browning and the Bengals. Both teams 7-6, both fighting for a playoff spot, both in the hunt. The Vikings are actually ahead, and they're in the NFC. Their 7-6 record technically has them in the 6th seed right now, if the playoffs were to start right now. And the Bengals 7-6 are in the hunt still. They're not in a 5th, 6th, or 7th wild card spot at the moment. So with that being said, it's tough, but with the Vikings defense having gotten so much better under Brian Flores, I get that Jake Browning's been doing well as a backup since coming in, but if the Vikings D neutralizes Jake Browning and the Bengals offense, another low-scoring game, then it's like, okay, on the other side of the ball, who you got? You got Bengals defense or you got Vikings offense? Even if Justin Jefferson doesn't play, and that's a tough one because a lot of times they don't look that good either, but I'm going to go with the Vikings offense over the Bengals D. So if it comes down to that, which to me is the weakest link of both sides, I'm going to take Nick Mullins and that Vikings offense, and I'm going to take that over the Bengals' poor defense. I'm going to take that over the Bengals' poor defense. So I'm going with the Vikings and a slight edge over the Bengals. Your other two Saturday games, you got Steelers versus Colts, both 7-6, also fighting for a playoff spot. And we're going to look at the fact that it's Gardner Minshew versus Kenny Pickett. Like, does it get any more puzzling and than that? I expect this to be a low-scoring game. Both teams are really not that great offensively. So it really just comes down to whose defense pins down the other's offense more. I would say this would be under 20 points for both teams. The Steelers are showing me some things, but then it's like, okay, then they go back to being what they shouldn't be, or what I thought that they were, which is a bad offensive team. And it's the same for the Colts. So it's really a toss-up here because, the Colts can look good and then they get beat by the Bengals 34-14. I'm like, where did that come from? We'll flip a coin. I'll go Steelers here. For nothing else than I think Mike Tomlin will outcoach the Colts. Like I said, it's hard because both these teams seem like they're on the same cusp. Good defenses, poor offenses, trying to limp into the playoffs, hopefully hoping that other teams lose, but you got to beat who's in front of you head on in order to have a shot. Whoever wins will be more closer to getting a playoff spot, possibly in the hunt, and whoever loses will likely be shutting down because of 7 losses. The best you can do is 10-7, and so it's very not that many teams once they get to a point of 7-7 are going to win out and win their last 3 games and go 10-7 and get into the playoffs. Is maybe one of those 7-6 teams or 7-7 teams will do that, but not many of them will. So I'm going to go with the Steelers here. Just because I believe Tomlin will outcoach. He'll outcoach the Colts and the coaching staff of the Colts, and that'll be enough, barely. But that's not confident at all. And then you've got the best one, they saved it for last, Broncos at 7-6 versus the Detroit Lions. Both teams need this game because of the Lions losing again. They're only 2 games ahead of the Vikings, and so they want to make sure that with still having to meet the Vikings again, they want to make sure that they secure the division, and then they can have a better shot at, because once they get to 11 wins, if the Vikings lose, if they get to 11 wins, then they've got the division. But they've got to get there. They've got to get there because sometimes they falter defensively, and then if something's wrong with the offense, then you can forget it. But for the most part, they're consistent. And I know that's why Dan Quinn is there, is to make that defense more consistent. I trust Jared Goff to do his job. But the Broncos have won 6 of their last 7, so it's not going to be easy. But this ought to be a great matchup. I still got the Lions here. I think they're slightly a better team. It's great that the Broncos, for themselves, have emerged and turned things around under Sean Payton. I expected the offense to eventually do that. I didn't think the defense would all of a sudden be back like it has been. But you also got to look at the teams that they beat. When you think about the upper echelon of the teams that they beat, in terms of, like, say, the top half of the league, the Broncos have not beaten that. And you can say, well, they beat the Chiefs, but look at how the Chiefs are drowning now. Look at how the Chiefs are falling down. The Chiefs are only 1 game ahead of the Broncos now. So it's almost hard to even call. I mean, still they're elite because of Pat Mahomes, if nothing else. But other than that, who have they really beat that's put them back on this winning streak? Have they beat the top teams in the league? Have they beat the Niners? Did they beat the Cowboys? They beat the Eagles? Did they beat the Ravens? Did they beat the Dolphins? No, they got stomped the mud hole in by the Dolphins at 70 and gave up 70 points. So they're not beating the top half of the teams. They're not beating the teams that they're going to face in the playoffs if they make the playoffs. So, I think they had the Broncos. It's great that they're, for themselves, that they've come back and turned the season around from early on. But they're not in the top 14 teams in the league. And only the top 14 teams in the league make the playoffs. So, and the Lions are one of those teams. So, got to go with the Lions here. Then we get to the Sunday games. The Falcons have surprised me as emerging as possibly the favorites to win the horrible NFC South. Tied with the Buccaneers at 6-7, but still atop the Buccaneers because of their last meeting. Falcons face the Panthers at 1-12. This should be an easy win for the Falcons, although I've seen crazier things happen. But I'll go with the Falcons here because even with their deficiencies, they're still better than the horrible Panthers. So Falcons over Panthers. Next, we have the Bears at 5-8. Believe it or not, I thought the Bears would be worse than this, so I am surprised. Going up against the 8-5 Browns. Just when I thought the Browns were like, okay, they reached their ceiling, then they come back and win another game. The Browns are 8-5 without their starting quarterback. And it's not like Deshaun Watson was consistently in games, in every game, even before his season-ending injury. So they've been doing it with different quarterbacks flopping in and out the entire season, really, if you think about it. Going up against Justin Fields is not easy, but if you think about the Browns holding this to a possibly low-scoring game, which I think it will be, I think they caused Justin Fields to make a couple of mistakes, and a couple of defensive touchdowns later, the Browns have the victory with not having to rely too much on their offense and whatever quarterback they plug in for that day. So I'm going to go with the Browns here over the Bears. Next, you got a battle of 2 6 and 7s who can possibly still make the playoffs in the Buccaneers versus the Packers. I like Jordan Love right now. If we're talking about this particular matchup, both defenses are meh. I'd probably take the Packers defense over the Bucks D as far as how good they are. And then I got to go with Jordan Love. To me, he's playing better, at least more consistently lately than Baker Mayfield. So I think it really just comes down to quarterback play. I can't trust Baker Mayfield to be consistent. He's good at times, but that's about it. Jordan Love started off rough, and it seems like he's steadily growing and getting better. So I got to go with, at this time, the better quarterback, which is Jordan Love. Packers over the Buccaneers. Next, you've got the Jets at Dolphins. This should be not easy for the Dolphins because the Jets still have a tough defense. But because the Jets don't have an offense, I really thought I didn't get what was going on with the Jets offense in terms of, the quarterback play, but the running game. I really thought at least the running game was going to do something. I thought Dalvin Cook was going to be a feature back and he was going to do well. And then eventually, he'd sign like a longer term or those short, fat money contracts that everybody's getting now. It was 3-year deals for a whole bunch of more money, whereas in decades and years past, it would take you'd have to at least sign like a 7-year deal to get that same amount of money. So I figured that was what was going to go on with Dalvin Cook, but it just seems like he's not getting enough touches, or when he's in there, it's just not working, whether it's him or the offensive line. I thought it was going to be better for the running game at the least, but seems like not. So if they can't do anything running football, or they don't have a consistent good enough quarterback, I'm not trusting that Aaron Rodgers is going to come back. I don't think he should. If he is, his future is, if he really wants to have a future with the Jets, they're 5-8. They're not going to make the playoffs. Even if he were to come back and they win out and go 9-8, that's not going to be enough. So why are you coming back? Anyway, I think Aaron just loves to be in the media, in the talk. So picking the Dolphins here as a better team overall over the Jets. Next, you got Giants at Saints. You would think that the Saints would have been better. I thought that they possibly would have been because the rest of the division would have been so bad. But here they are at a 3-way tie for 6 and 7. And of the 3, 6, and 7 teams, the Falcons, the Buccaneers, and the Saints, it seems like the Saints are in third place. To me, they technically are in second place, but to me, they're in third because the way they've been playing and the way Derek Carr has been underperforming, which I'm pretty sure they assumed that because it was all the Raiders' fault, which is why he wasn't successful, that once he got to a quote-unquote better team with a quote-unquote better defense, which now the Saints don't, and the Raiders have a better defense, now the Saints should be a shoo-in for, winning the division. I even predicted them to win the division based off of those factors. But as I stated before, it wasn't all the Raiders' fault. Part of it was Derek Carr. He wasn't the problem, but he was a problem. And them going up against the Giants, they're only one game better than the Giants. I don't know. This one's a toss-up because the Giants have won a few games and they can, they can play a little bit when they want to. But I'll say the Saints will get this one slightly better quarterback play, and they'll win a low-scoring game and beat the Giants. I'm hoping Saquon Barkley doesn't play and saves his body so he can get off that team and go to somewhere where he wants to be, somebody that will pay him, as long as it's not the Chiefs, the Patriots, the Broncos, or the Chargers. And next we got Texans at Titans. The Titans can come up and do what they need to do every now and then, but I'm not trusting Will Levis over C.J. Stroud. As long as C.J. Stroud is healthy and C.J. Stroud is actually going to play, Again, I don't trust injury reports when they are saying he's doubtful, unless they're like he is out and he is out for a couple months or he's out for 5 weeks with this particular injury. Unless I see that, I'm not trusting it. So I'm saying if we're thinking that CJ Stroud is going to play, even though he got a little hurt in the concussion protocol, I forgot what the date is on that, the time frame. But if CJ Stroud plays, Texans win. If he doesn't, Texans are going to be in trouble. But we'll go with that he's going to play, and that the Texans get the win over the Titans. Next, you got Chiefs at Patriots. It should be an easy one for the Chiefs, even though they are, coming off of a loss. And I get that the Patriots beat the Steelers, which we didn't expect, but I just don't see the Chiefs losing this one. I mean, that would be flat out embarrassment. And I think they're just too good. Even on their worst day, I think the Chiefs are too good to lose to the Patriots. So picking the Chiefs over the Patriots, not much to talk about there. The Niners are on their second or third bye week this year as they go into Arizona and face the Cardinals. Not much to talk about there. Better quarterback, better running game, better wide receivers, better offense, better coach, better defense, better ingredients from Papa John's. I told you I'd get it in there. But anyway, Papa John's, we need to talk. We need to talk Papa John's. Anyway, Niners over Cardinals, easy. Next, Commanders at Rams. I'm going to go with the Rams here. They did give Ravens all that they can handle last week, lost in overtime. But the Rams are, for the most part, they're a tough out. They're a tough team to beat, even though they've been beaten 7 times this year. But a lot of those times they were not at full power. They were not at full strength. Even when they are full power and full strength, they're not what they were 2 years ago in their Super Bowl winning season. But they're still better than the Commanders. So I think that there are going to be some changes in Washington, in D.C. If the defense isn't working that well, then that's directly on Ron Rivera. If he's not doesn't have that defense at least where it needs to be, I can kind of give him a pass for the offense not being that well. But that's why they brought in Eric Bieniemy. But if the defense isn't where it's supposed to be and the defense is ranked 31st, that's on Ron Rivera. And so maybe I think they let him go and maybe they make Eric Bieniemy the new head coach of the Commanders. Because the Commanders' offense is ranked 17th overall, 11th in passing. That's all Eric Bieniemy. So why not promote him the head coach? And you've got Ron Rivera, who's a defensive coach, and he's a head coach, and the defense is second to dead last in the league, not just NFC, but in the league. So I think you have to do that. I think you let go of Ron Rivera, or maybe you demote him to defensive coordinator if he's good with that, and you promote Eric Bieniemy to head coach. I think that's the way you do it. But yeah, picking the Rams over the Commanders. Next, you've got Cowboys at Bills. A tough one, I think, it'll be, because like I said, the Bills are hot, cold. They play tough, then they lose, and they play tough, then they lose. But if you think about it, going by that reasoning, they played tough and they won against the Chiefs. So now they have to flip-flop and they have to go back to what they were, which is losing. So, and plus they're facing the Cowboys. So I'm picking the Cowboys. It won't be an easy win, but the Cowboys should get a solid win. They're hitting their stride right now. They know they have to continue to win out to make sure that they win the division and stay over the Chiefs so that they get to host a playoff game, and the Chiefs have to go on, and the Eagles have to go on the road and possibly contend for that number 1 spot if the Niners were to lose another game, which I don't think is going to happen, but you never know. Cowboys over the Bills here. I won't necessarily say better quarterback, but Dak is hot right now and he's playing well, and it's going to take one of the top 10 teams in the league, I would say, in order to beat the Cowboys at any point during the rest of this season and into the playoffs. And the Bills are not one of those teams. So picking the Cowboys over the Bills. Next, you got Ravens at Jaguars. Going to pick the Ravens in this one just because if Trevor Lawrence is not 100%, even if he's in the game, if he's not 100% or he's not playing at all, the Jaguars have no shot. And right now, the Jaguars, are trying to fight to make sure that they win the division. But even that is looking kind of shaky right now if Trevor Lawrence is not healthy. Everything depends on him. Everything depends on him for the Jaguars. If he's not healthy, if he can't do anything, the Jaguars could lose every game the rest of the season and possibly miss the playoffs and lose the division if the Colts, if the Colts, especially the Texans, were to win out or win most of the rest of their games. So yeah, as much as I would have predicted, yeah, it was going to be the Jaguars winning the division, the Texans could come up and snag this thing. They can come up and snag that AFC South. So I'm looking forward to that in terms of at the end of the season to see what happens there. But for right now, yeah, they're going to drop to 8-6. The Ravens are high. The Ravens also want to continue to stay on pace with the Dolphins for the number one seed, because even though both teams are 10-3, technically the Dolphins have the number one spot at this point, and of course they'll be meeting up in a couple weeks, and that will probably decide who will get the number one spot between the Ravens and the Dolphins. But you don't want to lose a game before that head-to-head matchup and put yourself behind the 8 ball. So picking the Ravens over the Jaguars. And that is your Sunday night football matchup. And then Monday night, Eagles at Seahawks. Yeah, if it's a backup quarterback or if Geno's in, he's not 100%, as they really don't have a shot, I don't think, against the Eagles. The Eagles are just a better team. And after losing to the Cowboys handily, they want to make up for that. And they need to continue to stay on pace and hoping that the Niners and the Cowboys losing somehow they get the number one seed. Which crazier things have happened, but I don't see it. But yeah, the Eagles aren't losing that game. So Eagles over Seahawks on Monday Night Football. That will conclude your and mine and ours this particular episode for Scout Team Sports. I am your host, DeValian. Please be sure to continue to like, comment, and subscribe for this channel as we continue to grow it. I do appreciate all my subscribers. Again, go ahead and share it. And I will see you on the next week, every Saturday morning at 10 a.m. unless there's something else that comes up that I got to do. Holidays are coming up, so we'll see how that goes for me. I don't know week to week what that's going to be in terms of my schedule, but I will still get you your episode, whether it be early or on the actual date of 10 a.m. every Saturday at 10 a.m. or maybe earlier, and I'll get it to you. But again, this is Scout Team Sports. I am your host, DeValian, and I hope you enjoyed this episode. We'll see you in the midweek scramble that comes out every Wednesday night, that YouTube short, as well as next week's Scout Team Sports live stream. Believe it till you stop breathing. This is DeValian with Scout Team Sports. We'll see you next week.